welcome. Thank you for joining us here in this quiet space, created just for you. This audiobook novel is offered as a gentle refuge, a place to soften your focus and soothe your mind as you prepare for rest. It is a simple story designed to create an atmosphere of deep calm and allow the stillness of the moment to envelop you completely. Our story is called The Sound of Water in a Stone Basin. We will join Mark in his secluded courtyard garden, a small sanctuary of peace. Here, the world slows down to the pace of water being poured, and tranquility is discovered in the simple, mindful act of tending to a weathered stone basin, listening as its quiet song returns. Before you let go and drift into the story, if this kind of peaceful escape is something you appreciate, a gentle like or subscription is always welcome before you set your device aside. For now, there is nothing else required of you. Simply settle in, allow your body to grow heavy and comfortable, and let us begin. Chapter 1. The Still Water. The light of late morning was soft and indirect, filtered by a high, thin veil of cloud that turned the sky into a vast canvas of pale, luminous white. In the courtyard garden, this light was gentle and forgiving. It settled evenly on the ivy-covered brick walls and the gray, weathered flagstones underfoot, leaving no sharp edges or deep shadows. The air was still and cool, holding the faint, clean scent of damp stone and green, living things. It was a place of deep, enclosed quiet, where the sounds of the world beyond the walls were muffled into a distant, irrelevant hum. Mark stepped into the courtyard, his soft-soled shoes making only a faint brushing sound against the stone. He moved towards the center of the small space, his destination a low, wide basin carved from a single piece of granite. It was old, its surface pitted and weathered by years of sun and rain, and patches of bright green moss clung to its outer edges, a testament to its permanence. It was less a fountain and more a simple offering, a still point in the quiet garden. He stood before it, his hands resting loosely at his sides. He did nothing for a long moment but observe. The water within the basin was dark and murky, a circle of captured shadow. Its surface was almost perfectly still, broken only by a scattering of fallen leaves, 3 yellowed birch leaves and 1 deep red maple leaf that floated like tiny silent boats. They had lain there for days, slowly surrendering their color to the water. The water itself was so still that it formed a perfect dark mirror. Leaning forward slightly, he could see the reflection of the pale sky, a perfect circle of white captured within the dark stone rim. A single thin branch from a nearby Japanese maple overhung the basin, and its delicate skeletal reflection was etched with perfect clarity on the water's surface. It was a beautiful image, a small temporary painting of stillness. There was no judgment in his observation, no thought of the task ahead as a chore. It was simply a quiet acknowledgement of the present state of things. His gaze shifted from the reflection to the object itself. He ran a fingertip along the rim of the basin. The stone felt cool and solid beneath his touch, its texture a complex landscape of smooth, worn patches and rough, grainy areas. He could feel the slight dampness where the moss grew thickest. It was a grounding sensation, a connection to the simple elemental nature of the garden, stone, water, plant life, all existing together in quiet harmony. The silence in the courtyard was not an empty silence. It was full. It was layered with the near inaudible rustle of the ivy leaves against the brick, the distant, gentle coo of a wood pigeon, and the deep, resonant hum of his own quiet presence. The basin of still, dark water seemed to be the anchor for this silence, absorbing all sound, demanding nothing. It was a place of rest, even in its current neglected state. He knew it was time to tend to it, to refresh the water and clean the stone, but there was no hurry. This initial moment of observation was part of the ritual. It was about seeing what is, before gently guiding it toward what it could be. He took a slow, deep breath, the cool, clean air filling his lungs. The decision was made not with a thought, but with a subtle shift in his posture, a quiet readiness to begin. The still water had been honored, its quiet moment of reflection observed. Now, a new sound was waiting to be born. Chapter 2. The Empty Basin. The first step was to find the tools for the task, which were as simple and unassuming as the garden itself. Tucked away in a dry corner behind a large terracotta pot was a plain wooden bucket and a small scoop, also carved from wood. The scoop was shaped like a shallow bowl with a short handle, its surface worn smooth and darkened by countless immersions in water. Mark picked them up. The bucket was light. The scoop felt warm and organic in his hand. He placed the bucket on the flagstones next to the stone basin. Kneeling down, the cool, hard stone, a solid presence beneath his knees. He dipped the wooden scoop into the murky water. The motion was slow and deliberate, designed to minimize disturbance. The scoop broke the perfect surface of the water with a soft, liquid whisper. The reflection of the sky shattered into 100 shimmering fragments, and the floating leaves rocked gently on the new-made waves. He lifted the first scoopful of water. It was surprisingly heavy. He watched the dark water settle in the wooden bowl, a single red leaf swirling in its center. He poured it carefully into the bucket, the sound a low, hollow glug. The sound was contained, gentle, absorbed by the wood and the quiet air of the courtyard. He dipped the scoop again and again, establishing a slow, steady rhythm. Scoop, lift, pour. Scoop, lift, pour. The rhythmic motion was deeply meditative. His focus was entirely on the simple, repeated action, the sound of the water being ladled, the shifting weight in his hand, the gradual lowering of the water level in the basin. He wasn't thinking about anything else. He was simply emptying the basin. With each scoop, more of the stone interior was revealed, its surface slick with dark algae and sediment. The last few scoops were mostly silt and decaying leaves, which he carefully tipped into the bucket. Soon, only a shallow puddle remained at the very bottom. The basin was effectively empty. It looked different now, a hollowed-out stone, its purpose temporarily suspended. From the same corner, he retrieved a thick, soft cloth, old and well used. He dipped it into the remaining puddle, soaking up the last of the dirty water, and wrung it out over the bucket. Then he began to wipe the inside of the basin. The cloth moved in slow circular motions against the stone. The work was gentle, a caress rather than a scrub. As he wiped, the dark, slick film of algae came away, revealing the true character of the stone beneath. It wasn't a uniform, flat gray, but a beautiful, complex tapestry of color, lighter shades of silver and pewter, peppered with tiny dark flecks of mica that caught the soft light. The cool, slightly rough texture of the clean stone felt satisfying under the pressure of his hand. He worked his way around the entire inner surface, from the bottom up to the rim. The clean, earthy smell of wet stone began to fill the air, replacing the faint, stagnant scent of the old water. It was a clean, fundamental smell, the scent of the earth itself. There was a quiet satisfaction in the transformation, in seeing the basin's natural, simple beauty being restored through his own gentle effort. When he was finished, he stood up and looked down at his work. The empty basin gleamed with a soft, damp sheen, a clean and waiting vessel. The water in the bucket was nearly black. He picked it up, its weight substantial now, and carried it to a corner of the garden where it could be poured onto the soil around a thirsty hydrangea, returning the water and its nutrients to the earth. The basin was empty, clean, and ready. A quiet pause existed between the end of one state and the beginning of another. Chapter 3. The first new drops. With the old water returned to the earth and the empty bucket set aside, the courtyard held a new kind of stillness. It was a stillness of anticipation, of waiting. The empty stone basin sat at its center, a clean, hollowed shape in the soft light. Its pale gray interior, now free of grime, seemed to gather the available light, making it appear brighter, more present than before. Mark left the courtyard for a moment, his footsteps echoing softly as he walked through a stone archway leading back to the house. He returned shortly, carrying a large ceramic pitcher. It was a simple, heavy piece of pottery, glazed in a deep cobalt blue. It was full of fresh, clean water, and he carried it with both hands, mindful of its weight. The water inside sloshed gently with his movements, a quiet, contained sound. He walked back to the basin and knelt beside it once more, placing the pitcher carefully on the flagstones. He took a moment before he began to pour. He looked at the clean, empty basin, a small, perfect void. He looked at the pitcher of deep blue, full of clear, life-giving water. The contrast was pleasing. The whole ritual was about this transition, this simple act of renewal. He took the pitcher's handle in his right hand, supporting its weight from underneath with his left. He lifted the pitcher and tilted it forward slowly. The first drop of water formed at the lip, hesitated for a fraction of a second, glistening, and then fell. It traveled the short distance through the air and landed near the center of the stone basin. The sound it made was exquisite, a single clear, resonant plink. The sound was sharp but soft, and it echoed beautifully in the enclosed space, a perfect, tiny bell ringing in the silence. He tilted the pitcher a little more, Another drop fell, then another. Plink, plonk. Each one had its own distinct musical note, a random, gentle percussion on the stone floor of the basin. He listened, captivated by this simple music. It was the purest sound, the sound of water meeting stone, a conversation that had been happening for millennia. He continued to pour at this slow, deliberate pace, letting the drops fall one by one, savoring the delicate bell-like tones. As a small puddle began to form, the sound changed. The drops no longer landed on dry stone, but into the growing pool of water. The sound softened from a plink to a lower, gentler bloop. It was a thicker, more rounded sound, just as beautiful, but with a different character. He watched the surface of the small puddle, seeing how each new drop created a series of perfect concentric ripples that expanded outwards until they vanished at the water's edge. Then he tilted the pitcher further, allowing the water to issue forth not in drops, but in a slow, steady, silent stream. The stream was as clear as glass, a solid twisting column of liquid that plunged into the growing pool below. The sound now changed completely. It became a soft, continuous burbling murmur. It was a gentle, soothing sound, the sound of a small, happy brook. It filled the courtyard with a peaceful, living energy. He moved the stream of water around, letting it cascade onto different parts of the basin, enjoying the subtle shifts in the murmuring tones. The clean, fresh scent of the water seemed to brighten the air, washing away the last memory of the old, still water. The basin was coming alive again. Chapter 4. The water settles. The gentle, burbling murmur of the water filled the courtyard, a soothing and constant sound. Mark continued to pour from the heavy cobalt pitcher, his movements steady and unhurried. The water level in the stone basin rose, climbing the gently sloped sides. He watched the water, fascinated by its life and movement. Where the stream from the pitcher met the surface, the water churned in a lively, effervescent dance, tiny bubbles forming and popping in an instant. The rest of the surface was in constant motion, a pattern of swirling eddies and currents. As the basin became nearly full, he slowed the stream of water, tilting the pitcher back until the flow once again became a series of distinct drops. The sound returned to the soft, rounded bloop, bloop, bloop of water falling into water. Finally, with the water level just an inch below the rim, he stopped pouring completely. The last drop fell, its ripples spreading across the entire surface, and then a new kind of silence began to descend. He set the now much lighter pitcher down on the flagstones. The water in the basin was still in motion, swirling with the memory of being poured. He watched as this motion gradually began to subside. The eddies slowed, the current softened, and the surface grew progressively smoother. It was a slow, graceful process, the water finding its own natural state of equilibrium. It was like watching a thought settle in the mind, a moment of inner turmoil resolving into calm clarity. Within a minute, the water was almost perfectly still. The surface became a flawless, crystalline lens, perfect pane of liquid glass. The transformation was complete. Where there had been dark, murky water, There was now a circle of absolute clarity. He leaned over, looking down into it. He could see the bottom of the basin clearly, the beautiful variegated gray of the clean stone, its texture slightly magnified by the water. Then the reflections returned. The pale white sky reappeared on the surface, no longer a dull, flat reflection, but a bright, luminous one. It looked like a hole in the earth opening up into a circle of pure light. The delicate branch of the Japanese maple was reflected too, its image sharp and stable, every tiny twig rendered in perfect detail. The reflection was so clear, so perfect, it was for a moment disorientating, a world within a world. He moved his head slightly, and the reflection shifted. He could now see the reflection of the deep green ivy on the brick wall, its color rich and vibrant as seen through the lens of the water. The clarity was mesmerizing. It was a testament to the simple act of renewal. The water was not magical. It was just clean. The basin was not new. It was just clean. And together they created this small window of perfect, simple beauty. He remained kneeling by the side of the basin for a long time, lost in the quiet observation of the water. He watched as a single tiny dust mote, caught by a faint current of air, landed on the surface. It created a miniature dimple, and from it, the most delicate, almost invisible ripples expanded outwards, a silent, fleeting message across the still water. The basin had become a canvas for the subtlest events of the garden, a place where the smallest interactions of light, air, and life were made visible. The work was done, and the reward was this moment of profound, clear, and reflective peace. Chapter 5. A quiet listening. The visual beauty of the clear water had been fully absorbed. Now it was time for a different kind of observation. Mark rose slowly from his kneeling position, his knees making a soft sound against his trousers. He felt a sense of quiet completion, the deep, uncluttered satisfaction that comes from finishing a simple, meaningful task. The courtyard felt different now, brighter, fresher, more alive. The clean basin of water at its heart seemed to have subtly changed the very quality of the light and air around it. He turned and walked a few steps to a simple backless bench carved from the same gray stone as the basin. It was positioned against the warm brick of the wall, tucked under the gentle overhang of the ivy. He sat down, the stone feeling cool and solid beneath him. It was a familiar feeling, a grounding one. From here, he had a perfect view of the basin and the small world of the courtyard around it. He leaned back against the sun-warmed bricks, the rough texture of pleasant pressure against his shoulders. He closed his eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to shift his awareness from sight to sound. With the visual world temporarily gone, the soundscape of the garden became more vivid, more detailed. The dominant feature was the silence, a deep and resonant quiet that was the courtyard's greatest gift. But within that silence, other sounds began to emerge. He could hear the faint, dry rustle of the ivy leaves, a sound like soft paper being shuffled. He could hear the impossibly distant drone of a plane, so high and far away it was barely a thought. And beneath it all, he could feel more than hear a low, steady hum, the quiet, ambient vibration of the world. He opened his eyes again, but his focus remained on listening. Then a new sound entered the space. It was a cheerful, liquid chirrup, quick and clear. He turned his head slowly. A small house sparrow had landed on the rim of the Stone Basin. It was a tiny, bustling creature of brown and gray, its head cocked as it surveyed the fresh, clean water. It hopped from one side of the rim to the other, its tiny claws making an almost inaudible scratching sound on the stone. The sparrow dipped its head down to drink. Mark watched, motionless. The bird's tiny beak broke the surface of the water, creating a cascade of miniature glittering ripples that spread out across the basin. It drank 2 or 3 times, its throat moving as it swallowed. The sound was too small for him to hear, but he could imagine it. Then the sparrow did something delightful. It hopped into the shallow edge of the basin and began to bathe, fluttering its wings with joyous energy. Tiny droplets of water sprayed into the air, catching the light like a shower of diamonds. The gentle splashing sound was bright and full of life, a perfect, happy counterpoint to the courtyard's deep quiet. The bird reveled in the clean water for half a minute, then, as quickly as it had arrived, it flew up from the basin, showering a final spray of water, and perched on the maple branch above, where it began to preen its damp feathers. Mark smiled, a slow, gentle smile. This was the true purpose of the basin, not just for his own sense of peace, but for this, to offer a small moment of comfort and refreshment to the other, smaller inhabitants of the garden. He sat on the bench for a long time after the sparrow had flown away, simply being present. He was no longer observing or listening with intent. He was just part of the scene, a quiet figure on a stone bench in a peaceful courtyard where a basin of clean water reflected the sky.